One of the most basic questions in coffee is also one of the hardest to answer. What exactly is a specialty coffee now? It sounds simple, but for years, the industry has struggled to define it clearly. Some definitions have been too vague to be useful. Others have been too technical, reducing a specialty coffee to defect counts or a score above 80 points. At the same time, it is important to recognize the older scoring system did a great job. It gave the industry a shared calibrated language. Even if it was narrow in scope, it helped buyers, sellers, roasters, producers, and everyone in the supply chain a common reference point. That is also why some people remain cautious about newer models. The attributes approach is broader and more inclusive, but it still does not yet offer the same kind of single, universally calibrated scoring structure that many professionals were trained to trust that. Another useful way to think about a specialty coffee is through attributes. In other words, instead of asking whether a coffee is high quality or not, we ask what characteristic does coffee have? What makes that distinctive? And why do those characteristics create a value? This matters because the word quality itself can mean different things. Quality can mean a degree of excellence, but in coffee, that becomes difficult because taste includes preferences. One person may see a coffee as an outstanding coffee, while another person may not connect with that one at all. So, what is an attribute? An attribute is simply a defining feature of a coffee. Some attributes are intrinsic. That means they exist within the coffee itself. These include physical appearance, bean size, and the most important thing, sensory characteristics. Other attributes are extrinsic. These are not inside the coffee physically, but they still shape how the coffee is understood and valued. These include origin, producer's name, farm identity, branding, and sustainability claims. Specialty coffee should not be reduced only to what is in the cup. The cup matters, of course, but so does the coffee came from, who produced it, how it was processed, and how transparently that information is communicated to us. All of these are attributes, and all of them can create value. Another important point of these attribute models is that they can be measured. So, sensory attributes can be described and organized through structured methods like cupping. Sensory descriptive analysis and even references like flavor wheel is a way of understanding coffee through identifying sensory attributes rather than impressions alone. The question is which attributes actually create value? And that is a big shift because specialty coffee is not only about identifying differences, it is also about understanding which differences matters to buyers, drinkers, and the market itself. So, some attributes may strongly affect value, others may matter less, and that can vary by market, by culture, and by consumer preferences. So, this leads to one of the strongest ideas specialty and commodity coffee. They should not be seen as a simple binary. They are better understood as a continuum, let's say. So, what does this mean? Commodity coffee tends to emphasize sameness, consistency, and, let's say, interchangeability. Specialty coffee, on the other hand, by contrast, gains value through distinctiveness. So it means that the more meaningful and recognizable these attributes are, the more special it becomes within that framework. This perspective also changes how we think about scoring procedure. If specialty coffee is built from attributes, then evaluation should be broader than cup score alone. Attribute-based model can create a more holistic way to understand quality and value. It also reflects the reality that consumers and buyers often respond to much more than flavor notes alone. Another major strength of this model is that it makes a bigger room for diversity. Not every market values the same thing in the same way. So it means that one group of consumers may care deeply about fruity flavored notes. Another may focus more on producer's identity, or another may prioritize sustainability or regional characteristics. Instead of forcing one narrow universal standard, the attributes framework allows specialty coffee to be understood in a more global and more inclusive way. So, what is specialty coffee now? With a new term from Specialty Coffee Association, a coffee or coffee experience recognized for its distinctive attributes, and because of these attributes having a significant extra value in that marketplace. The definition is important because it does three things at one time. First, it shifts the conversation, let's say, a bit away from overly narrow definitions. The other thing is that it recognizes both the coffee itself and the broader coffee experiences. So, the third thing is that it connects distinctiveness directly to value. Specialty coffee is not just a coffee that scores well, it is a coffee that is recognized for the meaningful attributes that make it stand apart and create a value to the market because it gives producers, buyers, roasters, educators, and consumers a more flexible and more realistic way to talk about specialty coffee. So it means that it respects flavor, it respects context, it respects transparency, and it accepts that value can come from a combination of a sensory, physical, cultural, and informational attribute base. It is about being more distinctive, more meaningful, and more valuable because of the attributes that define it. But we should be fair to the old system. One of its biggest strengths was calibration point. It gave the industry a common language, so even across different markets, people had a shared way to evaluate a coffee. That is why some professionals like us still question the newer approach. The attribute model may be broader and more complete. We agree. But it still needs something. it still does not have a single calibrated scoring structure that everyone follows with the same confidence. So the criticism is not only about resistance to change, but it is also about the loss of a shared scoring structure for us.